Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to yet another version of MetaChat. It's what we call webinars at MetaMap. And so we'd just like to say thank you for joining us. Let's give it about a minute to give room for more people to join. But glad to have you here. It would be good if you can just help indicate where you're joining us from, what location you're in the chat box. If you're joining from Lagos, Nigeria, Kenya, any part of the world, please indicate in the chat box where you're from. And in about 1 minute, we'll be kicking off. Awesome. Hi, Larry from Lagos. Thank you for joining. Hi, Emma from Mauritius. So good to have you. So good to have you. That's amazing. Rakesh from Mauritius as well. So glad for you to join us today. And just as we're about to start, please remember to share your questions in the chat box, or you can use the Q&A feature, and we'll be sure to address them as the session goes by. So let's kick it off. Thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to this MetaChat where we'll be discussing combating identity theft with layered and fraud detection techniques. As we all know, this is a big concern in businesses of all sizes with increasing amount of sensitive information that's being exchanged online. It has become a thing where fraudsters take the opportunity to steal personal information and use it to impersonate individuals for financial gain. And so to combat this issue, we must implement effective fraud detection techniques that can identify and prevent fraud activities before it causes significant damage. There is this norm that there are two kinds of businesses. There is a business that has been attacked in the past, or there is a business that will be attacked in the future. And so if you are here today, you're in the right place where we get to discuss how can you react and solve any attack that might have occurred to your business in the past, or how can you prevent any sort of attack that could happen in future. And this could involve using multiple security measures, such as unique strengths, to create a comprehensive and robust system that can help identify and prevent fraud, at various stages of the fraud cycle. And so in this webinar, we'll be discussing how do we really combat, these fraudulent activities? How do we use sophisticated, recent, latest technology, be it from AI, machine learning, to combat such fraudulent attacks? So I would urge everybody to sit back, relax as we dive in. But before I continue, let me introduce myself. My name is Annie Intia. I'm a products and growth marketing expert, and I work with MetaMap, where I function, and I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. Before I dive in, I have a very special guest who will join me in discussing the said topic. But before I continue, let's have Eva join us, and I would also introduce her as well. Her name is Eva Iyeke. She's a solutions engineer, an experienced technical engineer with a portfolio of several projects involving integration and testing of banking solutions, payment systems, web applications, and microservices. She has proven analytical skills that has the keen ability to access needs, define requirements, implement value-added solutions, and deploy technical solutions as well. We are so thrilled to have Eva join us today. And hi, Eva. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Annie. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that amazing introduction.
Awesome. Now let's get started right into the discussion, Eva. As I mentioned earlier, there are two kinds of businesses. A business that has probably been attacked in the past, by cyber attacks or fraudulent attacks, or there are businesses that are, yet to be attacked, especially as businesses grow over time, the brand recognition increases, the popularity increases, and they become high targets for fraudsters, to put it that way. And so I will begin this discussion by asking you like two questions, to get started. What would you say are the common types of frauds that businesses are likely to face today? and what are the additional layers of security that businesses can implement to prevent these fraud attacks?
Okay, thank you so much, Annie. Thank you for that question. That's a very cumbersome question, and I'm going to have to say a lot. Now, what I'll try to do is to use simpler terms, because I know that we might be speaking to a technical and non-technical audience. So I'll try as much as possible to, break it down as much as I can. Right. So I'm going to share a slide just to help address those two questions. Now,
Awesome.
I'm going to start with case one, right? One of the fraud cases that businesses experience. Now, there are several fraud cases. There are several, fraud attempts, but I will major on three common ones today, right?
Okay.
And talk about them. The first one is something we call a man-in-the-middle attack. Now, this is something that affects businesses and also affects individuals. Now, what does a man-in-the-middle attack mean? Now, when you go to a website, right, or you go to a website, for example, and you want to carry an activity on your website, you have a session, right? And those sessions are managed by something we call session cookies. They are managed by cookies. Now, your cookies essentially have your login details and a summary of all the activities that you carry out on a website, right? Now, if someone gains access to that cookie, they can log into the platform with your login details, continue activities like you in your stead, and then the next thing you'll be receiving debit alerts. Right? So a man-in-the-middle attack is someone just intercepting in the middle, is dropping in your activities, right? So how can this happen? This can happen basically when web applications are not properly developed. Maybe they are not secure, right? You build a web app and it's not secure. It doesn't have the proper certificates to make it secure, right? This can happen when you have unchecked tokens, when you have session cookies that are set to not expire. For example, there are some websites that you can come to today and you log in and you carry out your activity, and then you come back to that website next week and you don't even need to log in again. You just continue from where you stopped. That is a very dangerous, practice. Your cookies, your session cookies must be set to expire. You can set your section cookies to expire, say, after an hour, after 30 minutes, after 4 hours, so that the user will be asked to log in again, right? Another way that a man-in-the-middle attack can happen is if you have a backdoor to your endpoint, right? Every session has an endpoint. If you have a backdoor, a loophole in your endpoint, someone can, we call it eavesdrop in your activities, right? They can even see your keystrokes, that they can see the things you type on a website, and they can take advantage of that, right? Let me just share something that happened to a friend of mine, right? So a friend of mine in Lagos, Nigeria.
A quick question is before you give a backup scenario. Just a question around man in the middle. Would you say the man in the middle, does he or she have to be an insider, or it could be an external personnel who is like doing some malicious attack, or does it necessarily have to be an insider?
Oh no, it can be an external person. It can be most times is an external person, someone that you really don't have any business with.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Go on, please.
Okay, so I was about to share a story of a friend of mine in Lagos. So he went for a class. He had like I would call it a webinar session, like a class in one of the business schools here in Lagos. And while he was in the class, of course, there were other people in the class. There was someone taking the class, and the person was taking the class via an online teaching platform, right?
Okay.
And while the person was, taking the class and teaching the class, his screen just stopped showing what it was showing previously and started showing an illicit video.
Okay.
And He tried to stop it, but his screen was frozen. He couldn't do anything on his screen. He couldn't take any activity. They had to stop the online session. It had to be ended. The session had to be ended, and then he came back and he had to explain that he was so sorry and someone else took over his screen. So imagine if he was doing a presentation to stakeholders of his company, for example, that would cost him his job, his reputation, and will cost a lot for the company, the name of the company.
Definitely.
Right? So man in the middle attacks are attacks that we have to be very careful of, right? And into the question you asked, saying what are the ways, we can take to mitigate man in the middle attacks. Now, before I go that, I just want to talk about the risk that is associated with man in the middle attack. Now, the major risk is your integrity and the confidentiality of your business will be dampened. It will be tampered with. And when that happens, it can lead to a lot. It can lead to loss of customers. It can lead to loss of funds. It can lead to impersonation, right? Now, what are some solutions that can mitigate the man in the middle theft or man in the middle attack? Simply, you want to inculcate extra layers in your business, extra layers that someone has to pass through before they access something. So let's say a man in the middle attack was to happen and someone has access to your login details, your username and your password. If you have something called a liveness detection check, for example, where you have to do a selfie video of yourself, like an extra layer, a biometric, before you log onto the platform or have access to the platform, the person will not be able to carry out the activities there. Now, doing biometrics has gone beyond just doing a selfie picture. I'll give you a quick example. Say someone dies today and the person died with the person's eyes open, right? And you want to access the person's phone, and the person's face ID is can help you access the person's phone. Someone can just put the phone over the person's face and get access to it. But we can't tell if that person is alive or dead. And that's why liveness checks are very important, right? So we want to see if this person is alive and if this person is really the same person behind the device. Very important. Another solution that we have here that can help to mitigate the man in the middle theft is email verification. Again, say they have access to your login details, your email and your password, right? And you put your email and your password, and then you have the email verification solution built on your platform. What it does is that it sends a push notification to your email to say, impute this code, right? And then when you impute the code, you can now proceed. So this can help to mitigate man in the middle attack. Another way is your phone number verification. Assuming your login for example, still is your phone number and a password. It sends a push notification to your registered phone number, right? And of course, if you have access to your phone and there's someone over the web trying to act malicious, you impute the code will be sent to your phone, right? Not the guy in the middle trying to steal from you. And then there's an extra check. So if he doesn't have that code, he can proceed further on that website. Another one is the e-signature that we have. So aside putting your login details, having a biometric, there are some companies that have high rates. That's the solutions that they provide to their clients or their users are high-end solutions. So you stay before you move out a certain amount of money from this platform. When you're done putting your login details, you're done doing your biometrics, a form comes up for you to put an e-signature for you to sign. Now, if this guy in the middle is carrying out a transaction or an activity as you and he gets to this part, he can't impute your e-signature, right? So that would have helped to mitigate, the man in the middle theft. Then the final two that I would like to talk about, face match. Now, this is just an extra layer. When you do a biometric, for example, for us here, when you do a liveness check or a selfie video, right? a selfie photo is extracted from that selfie video. Now imagine a company, you're a company, and you know this user. The user carries out activities on your platform, and you even have maybe during the registration process, you told him to upload a passport, so you have a copy of his picture in your database. And whenever he wants to log into the platform, you ask him to do a biometric, and then you do a face match between that biometric that he has done and the picture or the image that you have in your database. So we want to be sure, are these the same persons? So it is not possible when you have these layers for a man-in-the-middle attack to happen. Finally, location intelligence. For location intelligence, this solution is just amazing. I think about it and it's super amazing. So for location intelligence, we have several checks that you can do under location intelligence. One is what we call high accuracy check. Now, for high accuracy check, it uses your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth, your cellular network, your GPS to track you and get information about you. One time, when I had just joined the company, I just decided to do a location intelligence check, and when I did it, it returned my longitude, my latitude, returned my streets, my house number. I'm like, you can't run, you can't hide.
That is really sophisticated.
It was just super cool and super amazing. So imagine you come to a website and you carried out some transactions a few minutes ago, and then a man in the middle, right, gets a hold of your session cookies and tries to attempt transactions on your behalf, right? You carried out the transactions from Lagos, Nigeria, for example, and let's say the GPS or the location intelligence is reading that this person that just logged on is in Aba. The guy has been trailed.
That happens, yeah.
Exactly. So the guy can be tracked. So for me, location intelligence is actually amazing, and it's one of the solutions that companies should employ to mitigate man-in-the-middle thefts. With that, you can know that, there's someone else, kind of transaction or kind of activity on this site with this person's details, and we know that this person lives in, Lekki, Lagos, Nigeria, and we are seeing an activity from Aba. That's a red flag, and then the thing can take it from there. We also have something called IP check. So what IP check does is it uses the IP, right? The IP that you have to send in, to return your country, your state, your city, and of course, your zip code connected to that IP where you are. So these are some solutions that help to mitigate man-in-the-middle theft. I could go on and on and on, but I would like to just move to my use case 2, insider threat. Now, this is something that happens to a lot of businesses that people don't really pay attention to because they feel it's not happening over the web. Now, how can an insider threat happen? It can happen, from a disgruntled staff. So maybe the staff is offended that something happened, they didn't treat the staff right, and the staff is like, I'm going to show this company. Or a staff that is sent to disrupt the activities of of a particular company or cause havoc, to the company. Let's say somebody has an issue with you, the MD of this company, and the person says, I'm going to take this company down. And they send someone to just ruin your activities, cause havoc. Right? This is something that happens often, but people or businesses and companies don't really pay attention to it. And this can be a huge threat.
Yeah, and if I may add, this could be really tricky because staff, as you mentioned, is an insider and is someone the company tends to trust, and so there could be an oversight and not putting some measures to handling such situations. So, please go on. Good to see how we can solve for this.
Yes, amazing. So I'll just go straight to the solutions that can help to mitigate insider threats. Now, if the person that they're sending to cause havoc to your business is that good and can actually bring your business down, there's a likelihood that the person has already been flagged in a watch list. Now, we have a solution called the anti-money laundering watch list, right? So we have access to several watch lists across different countries in different stratas. So let's say somebody wants to, before the person even comes to your organization, you want to employ a staff, for example, you can carry out an AML watchlist check on the person, run the person's name through different checks. If the person's name is on any of the checks, we'll flag it and send you the details to say, this is the person's name and this is the watchlist that the person was found. Now, another beautiful thing that we have that, I mean, it's just super amazing is the AML screening monitoring. So what that does is, say, for example, you wanted to employ a new staff, yeah?
Okay.
And as at today, when you were running the check, these are practical things that can happen. Today, when you were running the check, he was not found on any list. And you're like, oh, great stuff, good to go. So let's hire him. And then let's say he has a history and he has done something very terrible in a previous company, and they just found out that he's the guy, and they flagged him and they put him on a watch list to say, oh, we are looking for this guy.
Yeah.
When you have run a check on our platform or with our solution, that person's data is kept, and a continuous monitoring of that name will be done. So if the person appears on a watch list tomorrow, we would flag it and send it to you. So even if you have employed the person thinking, oh, this guy is good, he's not on any watch list, when he shows up on the watch list tomorrow, we can still send you the information and then give you the option to take whatever action that you want to take. So it's like super amazing, right?
That's like some real proactive measure that, not only does it depend on current information, but future information as well.
Exactly. It's something that every business should have, right? Another thing is custom document verification. So let me talk about identity ID document verification first before I go to custom document verification. Now, same thing as when you want to employ a staff into your company, right? You ask the person for some ID documents that you can verify, right? We have a solution that verifies documents, national IDs, passports, tax IDs, tax cards, of different countries, right? So what our AI does is it would carry out a template check on this document to be sure that this document is coming in the template that it's supposed to be. It will carry out an alteration detection. So let's say somebody used a fake ID and put someone's ID and put his picture there. It will carry out an alteration detection. And if we find out, or we notice that, oh, this document has been altered, it will be flagged. Maybe the person changed a name on the ID. It will do that. It will carry out expiry check, right? Has this document expired? Is it invalid? Right. So these are solutions that can help to mitigate insider threat. Another one is government identity verification. So aside the document upload, where you can upload the document and we verify it, you can also provide an ID, right? A government ID. And what we do is that we run a check with this ID against a government database, and we return every information relating to that ID. We will return the first name, the last name, we will return the picture of the person, we return the email address of the person, the date of birth of the person, every information regarding or related to that government ID. So if someone wants to join your company, you're doing these screenings and you're like, okay, give me an ID, and the person provides, an invalid ID, it would totally flag it, right? Now, for custom document verification, let's say there are some documents, there's a document that we don't currently verify as a company today. You can put that document. So let's say you want to employ somebody and you require them to have a particular document. Say maybe they're coming for a certain role that requires a certain document. And you want that document to be able to go through the verification process to be sure that that document is valid.
Right.
You can use the custom document verification solution where you can, impute that. Now, we also have custom watch list screening. So like I said, we have access to different watch lists of different countries in different strata. So let's say you want to have a personal way of flagging someone. You say, if the person has done this and done this and done this and done this, flag the person. You can give us those criteria. right? Is you forming your own custom watch list. You can give us that criteria, and if we see someone that meets those criteria, we flag it. Like, it's just
Awesome.
super cool, right? Aside doing or providing the solution that we provide, we also give you a leverage to give us more information for us to provide more solution or more services to you, right? Another one that can also help is the business verification. So let's say your company wants to do a business with another company. I want to verify that this company is legit. They are not fraudsters. They are not scammers. You want to go into a long-term relationship with this company, right? So you can do a business verification on their business documents, their CAC documents, right? Their TIN number. You can carry out this verification to be sure that this business is registered and it is legit before I go on to do a business with these people, right? So I just want to go quickly to phishing, which is my final use case that I'm going to talk about today. Guys, phishing is one fraud case that companies fall for till today. In fact, as of 2022, we had 83% of companies fall for phishing and phishing mails. That's a large number. 83%, just 2022 here. Companies still fall for phishing till dates. And what's phishing? Phishing is just basically the practice of tricking internet users through a deceptive email or a malicious email into revealing personal information that can be used illicitly, right? So phishing is something that happens till dates, till today. And one of the ways, I would tell someone, someone will say, okay, how can I identify a phishing mail? You can identify a phishing mail, using several things, right? There are always almost red flags. Sometimes there are typographical errors in the mail, sometimes grammatical errors, sometimes there's an error in the domain email of which it was sent to you with. But guys, there's something today called organized crime, where these phishers have become so good that you will not even see a typographical error. It will be so challenging for you to identify a phishing mail. They use something called social engineering, where they go and they check, they pick their targets, they do a study on you, they check your social media handles, they check your activities, they check what you like. If you like cats, for example, they'll use cats, for example, and send you a mail that they think you're going to click. So it's becoming more challenging to identify phishing mails. Now, this is my advice to everyone here. For businesses, for companies, for individuals, right? How do you detect phishing mails aside the normal red flags I called, which people these phishers are bypassing? If you receive an email that asks you to carry out an instruction that is not approved by your organization, please, first of all, take a deep breath. Breathe first, because Easter is coming, and you might get email saying your boss just sent you a bonus, an Easter bonus. Click here to redeem your bonus, and everybody will be so excited. Bonus! Or they'll say there are a list of items to be given out to staff members for this Easter. Click here to select which item you prefer. Please. When you see me, breathe, calm down first. I know we want to eat Easter, a wolf, and bonus. Breathe. First of all, do an extra check and ask another colleague, did you get this mail too? And most times when that is to happen, you will get a notification from HR. You get an information from HR. Ask another colleague, did you get this mail too? If they didn't get the mail or they got the mail and you want to do an extra check, forward the mail to your security team. Something happened, to me recently, right? My company was to use a new training platform and I had never heard of the training platform before. And they sent me a mail saying, you've been nominated for this training. Click this link to start the training. Before I clicked anything, I reached out to a colleague of mine that has a similar role with me that I thought should also be sent to this training, and I told him, I was like, Shino, did you get this mail? And he said, oh, I got the mail. I was like, okay. I did an extra check and I forwarded it to our security team to say, please, could you kindly confirm that this is not a phishing mail?
Yeah.
And then they checked it and they returned a message to me the next day saying, oh, it's not a phishing mail. It's actually legit. And then later that day, we got an outlet to everyone saying that this is a new tool that the company was going to be using for training and all that. That extra check could just save you and your company from losing data, losing a lot of money, and losing your reputation.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think I'll just pause here. I've talked a lot. I think I'll just pause here, for now, and give Annie the opportunity to ask more questions.
Awesome. Yeah, this was really insightful. Getting to really understand man in the middle, insider threat, and phishing. These are things that some people may have already been aware of, and some people may just be having more insights about them today. But altogether, no information or no knowledge is too little to gather. And so, what action points or what action items can one take to ensure that this kind of threats or attack don't come near your business, near your company or organization? And thank you, Eva, so much for that round of use cases and insights that you've shared in terms of solutions. To follow up on that, I have some other questions, but before I continue, please don't forget to or remember to drop your questions in the chat box or Q&A feature, and Eva will try as much as possible to answer your questions. Eva, so my follow-up question, it would be, based on everything you've explained so far, what are the common types of fraud businesses are likely to face? But in a different way now, how can these businesses assess this fraud, and how can they determine detection techniques that are suitable for their needs?
Okay. What I would say to companies is, how you can detect this fraud and how you can know what technique will be best for your company. Run a risk analysis. Do a risk analysis for your business, right? Run a risk analysis. You can do a risk analysis on the core parts of your business, right? And it will tell you which part of your business is susceptible to fraud and the steps that you can take. There are management, risk analysis, and management teams that are specialized for this kind of operations. Run a risk analysis. It will show you your risk tolerance, your risk transfer. It will give you different information about the risk tolerance of your businesses. How close you are to actually being frauded. And then they would also tell you the best practices to, employ or use for your business, the type of business that you do. So my advice for companies is, from time to time, carry out a risk analysis on your company and on your core teams, the core teams that, provide, say, forms for your company.
Awesome. When you were discussing earlier, you talked about some solutions companies could leverage, to mitigate this kind of attacks. So what would you say would be the challenge, bearing in mind that some of these solutions, could be sometimes complicated to implement? And so what measures would you suggest or prefer that companies take when implementing such solutions to their businesses?
Okay, so it's two questions, Annie. So
yeah.
Yes. So let's break it down. So ask the first part, because I'm hearing two questions.
Yeah, so the first part is what measures can companies take to implement this kind of prevention techniques that you offered, in the first part of your presentation, where you said, for example, email verification, liveness, are solutions companies could implement. But the question is, these solutions could be complicated to implement, right? So what kind of measures can companies take, to implement these solutions?
Okay, so there are different measures that companies could take, right? First of all, I think the most challenge. So let me start with the challenge that companies face in implementing layered fraud detection techniques.
Yeah.
Right. One of the first challenge is actually misconfiguration of system operations. Right. Now, because when we're talking about layering techniques, we're talking about several tools, different tools. If there is a misconfiguration of this system operations, there's going to be a problem. Another problem that companies face in, implementing this is, I'm looking for the words to call it, insufficient monitoring and logs.
Okay.
You have implemented these fraud solutions now. You have them running. Do you have a monitoring system? Right? Insufficient and ineffective monitoring systems. Now, every team, every company, every business should have something we call the SOC and SIM team. Now, SOC means SOC. It means Security Operations Center, right? When you go to some companies, you see a room where there are like several screens, and you just see some guys staring at the screens. That's all they do. They just stare at the screens. So what they are basically doing is to monitor services, monitor logs, monitor activities. So if there is a hitch somewhere, they can easily notice it and take appropriate action. So you should have a SOC team. You should have a SIEM team, SIEM, right? A security integration and event management team, right? Every company should have these teams effective, active, and working. Because what companies lack is a monitoring system. They have these tools, but there's no monitoring system. We can't see, a system or a layer that is having a glitch somewhere, and we need to do something about it. So every company should have a SOC and a SIEM team. It will help a lot.
Interesting. And so what would you say is the best way to, or what would you say is the best fraud prevention strategy? Would you say a company needs to be reactive, that is wait for it to happen, or they have to be proactive, or which is implementing things before the inevitable happens in the near future? So what prevention strategy would you say is the best for any business to implement?
I can't say a particular preventive strategy is the best, because it's also in relation to the kind of services that you provide. But I would say that there are different ways, there are different solutions that you can have for your business. I'm just going to list a few. The base level. First of all, in a company, have a zero trust orientation. That's the first thing. Have a zero trust orientation where, you're not putting too much trust in a staff. That's the first thing. The second thing is have a user or administrative management system where you are not giving a staff much more access than he requires for his job. Quick example, let's say that you have a security guard securing a gate, right? His responsibility is to secure a gate. So you give him the key to the gate, but then you now go ahead and give him the key to the reception, the key to the MD's office, the key to the data room. That's not necessary, right? You are opening your company for an attack. So have a user and an admin management where you give someone access to do things that their roles require. Do you understand? And have an active directory where you store users and their accesses, the level of access that they have. You can even go an extra mile and have a PKI system, right? A public key infrastructure system. So what it does is that it encrypts those login details, and the login details can only be decrypted using a token. These are security checks that companies can put in to prevent all this. You can have an MFA system, a multi-factor authentication system, where you don't just use your username and password. You use a push notification, like I talked about, where you can be sent an email, a code to your email or your phone number, right? You can even do an extra and impute a biometric, where you need to do a selfie video, for example, do a liveness check. You can also have external authenticator apps, where when you put in your email address and your password, you're required to go to this external app and retrieve a code and impute it to continue. You can also have something that we call segregation of duty. Now, let me explain what this is, because this is profound. Now, segregation of duty basically is giving two people are more than one person is required to give access to a resource. So let's say I want to log into a resource, for example. and then I put in my username and password. It sends me a push notification. I check my mail. I input it. When I input it, it triggers the next person. It sends, let's say, a notification to the next person to say this person is trying to, access this resource. And then the person is also needed to put in his own security check that is needed. Let me say, put in a code or a password or something to grant access to that resource. So you can have something we call the segregation of duty. You can have, there are lots. I could go on and on, right?
Of course, of course.
So these are things that could help companies a lot.
Awesome. This has been really, really, really insightful. Thank you, Eva, so much for your insights, for your experts' opinions. And we've come to the end of this first session of this webinar. And so we have about
we have some questions.
30 minutes left. And so we'll dive right into the Q&A. And let's start with the first question, which is something you pretty much addressed earlier. From Laliko. He says, how can one mitigate this cyber risk? While you answer that, I can add another question that says, this is more specific now to one of the solutions you mentioned. To what percentage is your liveness facial detection check reliable? Yeah.
Okay. So our faceness check is above 97% reliable. And for a tech person, I'll tell you that's a lot. That's a lot, right? So is that reliable? Is that reliable? We have AIs that check this. Is that reliable? So it's 97% and above, and that's just a lot. That's a remarkable. So for us, that's it.
Awesome. Okay. So the next, how about the question about how can one mitigate these cyber risks? I know you mentioned some examples earlier.
Yes, I mentioned a lot of ways, right? If you joined the webinar earlier, I mentioned a lot of ways that you can mitigate cyber risk, right? You can, if you use a website, okay.
What would you say would be your top 5? If you were to, share your opinion.
Yeah, my top 5 will be: number 1, set your session cookies to expire, right? Set your websites to expire after a period of time and to enable the users login again, right? Number 2, use several security layers. You can use, like I said, after your email, your login details, a biometrics, a liveness check, a push notification, an external authenticator, you can use all these. So basically use several layers of layers for security. This can help, provide. Then for companies, one other thing that you can have for your team is always have security awareness trainings for your team. Have the security awareness trainings where you teach your team, then send them tests. You can do a phishing awareness training, send them, after the training, after teaching them, send, them, some companies do that, send them a phishing mail, right? If they fall for it, you conduct another training for those that fell for it. Always have an awareness check. After a while, do a refresher course. When you have new people employed, take them on security awareness trainings. Very important. When you do that continuously, it can also help mitigate cyber risk. There's a lot, right? And I think I mentioned most of them at the beginning of the call. All right.
Awesome. There's a question here as regards to the third use case you mentioned about phishing. So the question is, what kind of solution do you have to detect phishing?
Okay, so basically for phishing, there is, one of the ways to mitigate phishing will be setting a security system on your mail servers. So let's say you use Office 365 or use Exchange, for example. You set up a security system on your mail servers. So what it basically does is these security systems already have the correct domain name and all that. When a mail comes in, they check the header of the mail, they check the body of the mail, right? If the mail is fine, they see that, the mail is fine. Oh, great. They let it pass through and you can receive the mail. If they detect something wrong with the mail, they simply quarantine it. It never gets to you. Right? So you can set these security systems on your email servers or your email endpoints.
Awesome. Quickly to the next question, which is around how can I set up SOC and SIEM for my organization? So SOC being Security Operations Center, and SIEM being Security Incidents and Event Management. How can this be set up for an organization?
So you can set that up for your organization. Find out what it requires. What the qualities are needed for you to have these people. For example, what qualification do you require? What do you need to know? You can outsource, right? It's two things. You can outsource, or you can pick some people from your team, right? Take them through the training, get a professional to come take them through the training, and then you have this team assigned to do this. Or you can, if you want to employ people, right, staff that will just be in charge of this, there is a qualification. There are qualifications that you require. If you check them up, you see them, right? They are actually called monitoring teams generally. So there are qualifications that you require, and then you employ these staff that have these particular qualifications, and of course they should go through a training, right? But the most important thing is that you should have teams assigned to this, because if someone has a phishing incident, for example, they need to have who to forward it to. They need to have a team to forward it to. You need to have a team to relate it with, to speak with, right? So it's important that you have that, and you can outsource, or you can just pick people from your company and take them on the training. Awesome. And they'll be dedicated for that role.
Perfect. There's an interesting question here about security as well. The question says, my organization uses webmail and cPanel, on their websites, and it's built on WordPress. So the question is, what solutions does MetaMap have that can work for them?
Okay, so it's depending on, so if you use webmail, right? So this is like, these are to mitigate phishing, I would hope, right? Or I would think, right? So I'd already said this earlier, that you can have a security system that is built on these your mailing servers that will just help to stop or flag, right? Now, one of the things that MetaMap has, one of the solutions that we have is the email verification that we provide. So let's say someone wants to go through your platform, for example, and the person provides an email address, right? We can send a push notification to verify that this person putting this email address is the owner of the email, or is the owner of the email account, right? And the person will be required to put in some details. But what I can also advise you to do as an organization is to set up a security system on your web servers, a system that that does a check on the emails that come through, the header of the email, the body of the email, right? If it's okay, it passes through for you to get access to them. If it's not, it just quarantines it and you don't even get access to it. So I hope that helps.
That was very insightful, very, very insightful. One last question here from Herman says, what would you say from your experience is the most type of fraud identified in the Africa market?
Phishing. Phishing. I can't say this enough. Phishing. And that's why I'm saying this out here. Easter is coming soon. And these fishers might be at it again. They will send you a mail saying you have an Easter bonus from your MD. Please. Before, like I said, when you see those emails, I know excitement. You just want to click and redeem your bonus. Breathe. Phishing is one of it. Phishing, and then man-in-the-middle attacks. And like I said, we have different solutions that would help you mitigate man-in-the-middle attack. But phishing, I mean, like I said, in 2023, we had 83% of companies and organizations fall for phishing. So I'll say phishing and then man-in-the-middle attack. Very, very important. Man-in-the-middle attack. Very, very important. So if you heard me earlier, I said that I listed about 6 solutions that we provide that can help mitigate man-in-the-middle, and you will be good. Man-in-the-middle and phishing. So these are the most common in Nigeria and in Africa.
Perfect. All right. This has been really, really helpful. I don't know if we have more questions, but we have about 10 minutes more. But in the midst of no more questions, this has been really insightful. Thank you, Eva, so much for your knowledge sharing and for your experience and opinions concerning this topic on fraudulent attacks on businesses. We've learned so much today, from man in the middle to insider threat to phishing, which happens to be like the most prevalent in the African market based on in the last question. And here at MetaMap, we have shown that we have solutions that can really bring that ease of mind to the problems that businesses are facing or could face if it has not yet happened. And so, as one of the points earlier mentioned, is how can one be proactive and not wait, for these attacks to come. And so, this has been really wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If you have more questions, please, you can send it to Joyce Gital at metamap.com. The email has been shared in the chat box. And also be aware that a recording of this session will be shared with you. And also, please, you can also reshare to your colleagues who may have missed this and you feel will be of importance to them. Once again, thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again in the next webinar series that we call MetaChats. And thank you so much for joining us.
And just to add, before we let you go, there are a lot other solutions that we provide aside the ones that I listed and mentioned on the slides. There are a lot more, right? So just like Annie mentioned, if you want to get more information, you can send an email to, I think the email has been dropped on the chat box. If you even have more questions, you can also send them on the chat box. Someone says, thank you for the webinar. This was insightful. Thank you so much. I'm saying thanks. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, MetaMap, for this opportunity.
Yeah. Bye for now.
Bye.